Hello, friend. Welcome to Science for Sleep. Whether you have returned tonight or are discovering this channel for the first time, this is a quiet place to slow down, learn something gentle, and allow the day to slowly fade into the background. Tonight, we are spending some time with the northern cardinal, the bright red songbird that has become one of the most familiar wild animals in eastern North America. On a grey winter morning, a male cardinal can seem almost too vivid for the landscape around him. Snow covers the ground, bare branches stretch into a pale sky, and most remaining colours have softened into brown, white, and charcoal grey. Then, inside a leafless shrub, a small patch of red begins to move. The bird is not large. From the tip of his bill to the end of his tail, an adult northern cardinal usually measures between 21 and 23 centimeters. He commonly weighs between 42 and 48 grams, about as much as a small chicken egg. His wings may span between 25 and 31 centimeters when fully opened. Much of his apparent length comes from a long tail, which extends well beyond his rounded body. At the front of his face is a thick red-orange bill shaped like a short cone. This bill is strong enough to grip a seed, crack its outer shell, and help separate the edible center from the dry husk. A black mask surrounds the bill and reaches across the throat, creating a sharp border against the red feathers. Above the head rises a pointed crest made from feathers that can be raised or lowered. When the bird is alert or disturbed, the crest may stand sharply upright. When he is resting or feeding calmly, it often settles closer to the head. His body is compact, his wings are rounded, and his feet are built for gripping narrow twigs while he moves through thick shrubs. Nearby, there may be another cardinal that is much easier to overlook. The female is mostly pale brown, sometimes washed with warm shades of tan or soft grey. Her wings, tail, and crest still contain patches of red, and her bill carries the same strong orange-red colour seen in the male. Against dry leaves, thin branches, and winter grass, her quieter colouring can make her disappear, even while she remains only a few meters away. The two birds may stay close without sitting directly beside one another. A soft chip call from inside the shrub can reveal the position of a bird that the eye cannot find. If you enjoy these quiet journeys, you're welcome to subscribe. And if it feels natural, to leave a comment sharing where you're listening from tonight. It helps others find this calm corner of science, one sleepy listener at a time. The cardinal's winter appearance can create the impression that it belongs especially to snow, cold mornings, and bare trees. In reality, the bird has been living through the same landscape all year. Across most of its range, the northern cardinal is a resident species. A resident bird remains within the same general area instead of making a long seasonal migration between distant breeding and wintering grounds. A cardinal living in southern Ontario does not normally solve the approach of winter by flying thousands of kilometers toward the tropics. It remains among the same woodlots, gardens, stream edges, hedges, and suburban streets it used during spring and summer. The individuals seen beside a feeder in January may have defended a nearby territory in April. It may have helped raise young in June, replaced worn feathers during late summer, and searched the same network of shrubs for fruit and seeds in autumn. Staying through the year does not mean that its life remains unchanged. The cardinal adjusts its behavior as the seasons turn. During spring, pairs spread across breeding territories and defend space from neighboring cardinals. During summer, adults search for insects that provide growing nestlings with protein and fat. During autumn, new feathers replace old ones through a process called molt. In winter, territorial boundaries become less strict, and several cardinals may gather where seeds and shelter are dependable. Their feathers trap layers of still air near the skin, slowing the loss of body heat. Dense shrubs and evergreen branches provide protection from wind. Seeds, fruits, and food found around human homes help supply the energy needed to remain warm through long nights. The bird in the snow is therefore not simply enduring cold through toughness. Its survival depends on a full system of insulation, metabolism, feeding behavior, shelter, and social adjustment. The same is true of its famous color. Red feathers are not ordinary feathers painted by chance. Their color begins with pigments gathered from food, altered inside the body, and placed into each feather while it grows. The male's brightness, the female's softer pattern, their shared songs, and their ability to remain close to people all come from different parts of the same biological history. Inside one bird weighing less than 50 grams is a life shaped by chemistry, weather, competition, parenthood, and generations of movement across a changing continent. To understand how those pieces came together, it helps to begin with the identity hidden beneath the familiar red feathers. That biological history is carried in the bird's scientific name, Cardinalis cardinalis. The first word, cardinalis, identifies the genus, which is a small group of species that share a relatively recent evolutionary ancestor. The second word identifies the individual species within that genus. Because the northern cardinal gave its name to the genus, both words happen to be the same. Scientific names follow a system called binomial nomenclature, meaning that each species receives a two-part name. This system allows researchers in different countries to identify the same organism even when local names vary from one language or region to another. The northern cardinal belongs to the order Passeriformes. An order is a broad branch of the animal family tree containing related groups. Passeriformes includes more than half of all living bird species and is often described as the order of perching birds. Most members possess feet adapted for gripping branches, with 3 toes pointing forward and 1 extending backward. Within that enormous order, the cardinal belongs to the family Cardinalidae. A family is a narrower evolutionary group, placed below an order and above a genus. Cardinalidae includes cardinals, grosbeaks, and several kinds of buntings found across the Americas. Many members have thick bills that can handle seeds, although their diets, colors, and habitats vary widely. The northern cardinal did not always carry its modern scientific name. In 1758, the Swedish naturalist Carl Linnaeus published the 10th edition of his major classification work, Systema Naturae. That edition became an important starting point for the scientific naming of animals. Linnaeus called the cardinal Loxia cardinalis. The genus Loxia is now used for crossbills, birds whose upper and lower bill tips cross over one another. Crossbills use that unusual shape to open the scales of conifer cones and remove the seeds inside. The cardinal's bill does not cross at the tip, yet its deep seed-crushing shape led early naturalists to place it near other heavy-billed birds. Classification in the 18th century relied mainly on visible anatomy, preserved specimens, and written descriptions. Modern taxonomy can also compare behavior, internal structures, geographic history, and DNA. As evidence accumulated, the northern cardinal was moved into the genus Cardinalis, where it remains today. One of its closest living relatives looks surprisingly different. The Pyrrhuloxia, scientifically known as Cardinalis sinuatus, lives mainly in dry parts of the southwestern United States and northern Mexico. Its range includes portions of Arizona, New Mexico, Texas, and the Mexican desert interior. A male Pyrrhuloxia has a mostly grey body, with red on the face, crest, chest, wings, and tail. Its pale yellow bill is deeper and more curved than the northern cardinal's red-orange bill. That heavier shape helps it handle the hard seeds available in desert scrub and thorny grassland. The two species overlap in some parts of the southwest, where both may appear around mesquite, brush, farms, and desert settlements. Their shared crest, body shape, vocal qualities, and genetic history reveal their close relationship, even though one bird is brilliant red and the other is largely grey. Colour alone can therefore give a misleading picture of ancestry. Several birds outside this family also carry the word cardinal in their common names because people noticed red feathers or a crest. The red-crested cardinal of South America, for example, belongs to the tanager family rather than Cardinalidae. Its familiar name reflects human comparison, while its scientific classification reflects a different evolutionary branch. The true northern cardinal occupies an exceptionally broad geographic range. It lives through much of the eastern and central United States, from the Atlantic coast westward toward the Great Plains. Its northern range reaches southern Ontario, southern Quebec, and parts of the Canadian Maritimes. Farther south, cardinal populations continue through Mexico and into Belize and Guatemala. They can occupy humid river valleys, warm coastal plains, dry thorn scrub, farmland, city parks, and snowy northern suburbs. Much of the Rocky Mountain region, the Great Basin, and the Pacific Northwest remains outside the species' natural continuous range. Introduced populations exist in a few western locations and on islands such as Hawaii, but the cardinal is still most strongly associated with the eastern half of the continent. Across those thousands of kilometers, temperature, rainfall, plants, and seasonal food supplies change greatly. The bird repeatedly succeeds wherever the landscape offers a certain physical structure. It favors places where sunlight reaches the ground and produces dense shrubs, vines, grasses, and low branches. These tangled boundaries between open ground and taller vegetation provide the setting in which the cardinal's body begins to make complete sense. At the edge of a woodland, the ground receives more sunlight than it does beneath a closed roof of mature trees. That extra light allows grasses, vines, berry-producing shrubs, and young saplings to grow in a thick layer close to the ground. Insects gather around the new leaves and flowers. Seeds fall into open patches of soil. Fruit ripens along branches that can be reached without flying high into the canopy. This mixture of cover and food creates ideal cardinal habitat. Northern cardinals are often found along forest margins, overgrown fields, hedgerows, wetland borders, and young woodland recovering after a clearing. They also use parks, gardens, cemeteries, farms, and suburban yards where shrubs have been allowed to grow densely. A hedgerow may be only a narrow strip of bushes between two fields, yet it can provide food, nesting sites, shelter from wind, and a covered route between larger patches of vegetation. A marshy thicket offers a similar structure. Willows, reeds, vines, and low branches form a complicated space where a cardinal can feed near the ground and vanish into cover within seconds. The lower layer of vegetation beneath taller trees is called the understory. Cardinals spend much of their time in this understory, especially when feeding, nesting, or moving with young birds. They may sing from the top of a tree, a telephone wire, or another exposed perch where their voices can travel farther. After the song ends, they often drop back toward the shrubs below. This creates a clear contrast between the places used for broadcasting sound and the places used for most daily work. A male may appear highly visible while singing above a yard, then become surprisingly difficult to follow once he enters a tangle of honeysuckle or wild grape. Even brilliant red feathers can disappear when branches divide the body into small patches of light and shadow. The cardinal's bill is especially well suited to the foods found around these edges. It is short, deep, and shaped like a cone, with a broad base that gives the jaw muscles room to produce force. When the bird picks up a seed, the tongue helps rotate and position it between the upper and lower parts of the bill. Pressure cracks the outer hull. The tongue and bill then work together to remove the softer edible center. Empty shells often fall beneath the bird, while the seed itself is swallowed. This process allows cardinals to handle sunflower seeds, grass seeds, grains, and many kinds of wild plant material. The same bill can crush small fruits, pull insects from leaves, and carry food to a mate or nestling. Cardinals commonly forage on the ground, or only a short distance above it. They move through fallen leaves, low stems, and patches of bare soil, pausing to turn their heads toward small movements or sounds. Open ground makes food easier to find, though it also leaves the bird more exposed. Dense cover nearby solves part of that problem. A cardinal can cross a lawn, feeding area, or woodland opening, and then retreat quickly into a shrub when a hawk passes overhead. Its wings support this pattern of movement. They are rounded rather than long and narrow, which suits short flights and fast changes in direction. A bird crossing an ocean benefits from wings built for efficient travel over great distances. A cardinal spends much of its life moving between branches, only a few meters apart. The long tail helps during these brief flights. It can spread during braking, shift the bird's balance, and assist with turns inside confined spaces. While perched, the tail also helps steady the body as the bird reaches toward fruit or drops onto a lower branch. Small adjustments happen so quickly that they are easy to miss. The bird opens the tail slightly, angles its body, and lands between stems that may be separated by little more than the width of its wings. Its feet complete the connection with the thicket. 3 toes point forward and 1 points backward, allowing each foot to wrap around narrow twigs. This arrangement is common among perching birds and gives the cardinal a secure grip, even when branches bend under its weight. The crest changes the bird's appearance without requiring any movement of the head itself. It is made from feathers that can be raised, partly flattened, or laid close to the skull by small muscles in the skin. A sharply raised crest often appears when the bird is alert, excited, or confronting another cardinal. A lower crest may accompany feeding or resting, though posture must always be read together with the bird's calls and other movements. Every familiar feature now serves a practical role. The bill processes food. The wings and tail guide short flights through clutter. The feet grip thin supports, while the crest helps communicate changes in behavior. This body works especially well in places where open feeding ground lies only a quick flight from protective vegetation. Yet one feature still seems unusually conspicuous for a bird that depends so heavily on concealment. The red feathers begin with molecules gathered from food and transformed inside the cardinal's body before a new feather ever opens to the air. Inside each red feather, color begins long before the feather becomes visible. The starting materials are carotenoids, a family of yellow, orange, and red pigments made mainly by plants, algae, and certain microorganisms. Cardinals cannot build these pigments entirely from basic nutrients inside their own bodies. They obtain carotenoids through food. Wild fruits can contain them directly, while seeds and insects may carry pigments that began farther down the food chain in plant tissue. After a cardinal swallows food, digestion releases pigment molecules from the surrounding material. Those molecules pass through the wall of the intestine and enter the bloodstream, often carried alongside fats because carotenoids dissolve more readily in fat than in water. Circulation then transports them toward organs and growing tissues. Some yellow and orange pigments can be used in the form in which they entered the body. The deep red of a male northern cardinal requires an added chemical step. Enzymes alter the structure of certain dietary carotenoids by adding oxygen-containing groups to the molecules. The red products formed through this process are called ketocarotenoids. The word describes carotenoids that contain a chemical feature known as a ketone group. That small change in molecular structure affects which wavelengths of light the pigment absorbs and reflects. As a result, a pigment that began in a yellow form can become a richer orange-red or crimson color. One important part of this system is connected with a gene called CYP2J19. A gene is a section of DNA carrying instructions that cells can use to make a working molecule, usually a protein. The northern cardinal genome contains a CYP2J19 region strongly associated with red coloration. The protein produced from this genetic instruction belongs to a large family of enzymes that help modify chemicals inside living cells. Research across several red-colored vertebrates has also identified a second protein called BDH1L. Experimental work has shown that CYP2J19 and BDH1L can operate together to produce red ketocarotenoids from yellow dietary pigments. Scientists are still studying exactly how these proteins divide the work inside different species and tissues. The central process is clear enough to follow. Food supplies the raw pigment. Digestion releases it. Circulation moves it. And enzymes change part of it into a red form that can be placed inside growing feathers. That final stage occurs during molt. Molt is the natural replacement of old feathers with new ones. Northern cardinals usually complete a major molt after the breeding season, often during late summer and early autumn. An old feather loosens and falls away, while a replacement begins growing from a small pocket in the skin called a follicle. At first, the developing feather remains connected to a blood supply. Nutrients, proteins, and pigments enter the growing structure, while its cells are still active. The feather gradually lengthens inside a protective sheath before opening into its finished shape. Keratin forms most of the structure. Keratin is the tough protein also found in human hair and fingernails. Once growth is complete, the blood supply withdraws and the mature feather becomes dead tissue. its color has already been fixed within the feather. A cardinal that eats a bright red berry does not turn red a few hours later. The pigment from that meal may contribute to future feathers if it is absorbed, processed, and available during molt. Existing feathers cannot receive a fresh supply from the bloodstream after they finish growing. Rare yellow male cardinals have helped make this hidden chemistry easier to understand. In one detailed chemical examination, researchers compared feathers from an unusual yellow male with feathers from normal red males. The red birds contained 4 red chetocarotenoid pigments. The yellow bird lacked those normal red products. Its feathers instead held yellow carotenoids and yellow compounds produced during pigment metabolism. The bird had still gathered pigment from food and deposited it into feathers. A disruption somewhere in the conversion pathway had changed the final result. The yellow cardinal therefore acted like a natural experiment, revealing what happens when the usual red-producing system does not reach its normal endpoint. Every bright male carries the outcome of this pathway across thousands of feathers. His appearance records the foods available before molt, the operation of pigment processing enzymes, and the successful growth of each new feather. Weather, health, age, and access to suitable food can all influence parts of that process. Individual males therefore emerge from molt with small differences in hue, brightness, and color depth. Those differences can become visible information when cardinals meet, compete for space, and choose breeding partners. Across a group of male cardinals, the color of the feathers varies more than it first appears. One bird may carry a deep crimson breast, while another looks slightly paler or more orange. Brightness can also change as feathers wear. Fresh feathers have smooth surfaces and complete edges. Months of sunlight, rain, movement through branches, and contact with the ground gradually roughen them. Color, therefore, reflects several parts of a bird's recent history, including pigment production during molt and the condition of the feathers afterward. Biologists sometimes describe a visible trait like this as an ornament. An ornament is a feature that can influence how other members of the same species respond to its owner. Bright feathers may affect courtship, rivalry, or the decision to approach or avoid another bird. The term does not mean that the trait exists only for decoration. A biological ornament can carry useful information when its growth depends on food, health, age, or the ability to complete molt successfully. The red plumage of a male cardinal is especially interesting because its production connects several systems. The bird must obtain carotenoids through food. Its digestive system must absorb them. Enzymes must convert some of those pigments into red chetocarotenoids. Growing feathers must then receive the pigments during molt. A failure or limitation at any point can influence the final appearance. This gives color the potential to act as a signal. Signals become important through a process called sexual selection. Sexual selection occurs when certain traits affect reproductive success by helping an animal gain a mate, maintain access to breeding space, or compete with rivals. Over many generations, traits linked with greater reproductive success can become more common. In northern cardinals, researchers have tested whether male redness is connected with territory quality, mate characteristics, and the number of young produced. One 3-year field study followed breeding cardinals through repeated nesting seasons. Researchers measured male plumage color, observed the territories occupied by different pairs, and recorded reproductive outcomes. Redder males produce more offspring during the breeding season on average. They also tended to occupy higher quality territories and pair with females that began nesting earlier. An earlier nesting date can matter because it provides more time for replacement attempts or additional broods before the breeding season ends. Territory quality can influence access to dense nest cover, insects for chicks, and reliable feeding areas for adults. These surrounding conditions helped explain part of the relationship between red plumage and reproductive success. The findings describe a pattern across many birds. Individual lives remained much more complicated. A highly colored male could still lose a nest to a snake, fail to hold a useful territory, or raise fewer young during a difficult season. A paler bird might secure excellent cover, provide food steadily, and reproduce successfully. Feather color contributed one piece of information within a larger system. Cardinals can also assess the color of the bill. The red-orange bill contains carotenoid pigments and may change in appearance with age, season, nutrition, and physical condition. The black facial mask creates contrast around that bill, making both features easier to see during a close encounter. Posture adds another layer. A raised crest, forward-facing body, or sudden approach may communicate readiness to confront an intruder. Song carries information across greater distances, especially when leaves or branches block the view. Behavior after pairing may matter just as much as appearance. A male can help defend the territory, bring food to an incubating female, and feed young after they hatch. No single signal provides a complete record of how that bird will perform. Other research has found a pattern called assortative pairing. This occurs when breeding partners resemble one another in a measured trait more often than random pairing would predict. Among cardinals, some studies have found similarities between partners in carotenoid-based plumage and bill coloration. Several processes could produce that pattern. Individuals may prefer partners with certain traits. Competition may sort birds into territories of different quality. Birds living in the same local environment may also eat similar foods and experience similar conditions. These influences can operate together, making the exact cause difficult to separate. The male's red body has received most of the attention because it is easy for human observers to see. The female carries her own set of colored feathers, bill pigments, facial markings, and behavioral signals. Her quieter appearance contains information that becomes especially important once the pair begins choosing a nest site and dividing the work of reproduction. A female northern cardinal can remain nearly invisible while standing only a few branches away from the male. Her body is usually pale brown, warm buff, or softly washed with grey. Red appears most clearly along the crest, wings, and long tail. The bill is bright red-orange, much like the male's, and a darker patch surrounds its base. Her facial mask is usually smaller and less sharply defined than the deep black mask of an adult male. These colors become easier to see when she turns. A folded wing may appear brown at first, then reveal red along the larger flight feathers as she moves toward another branch. When the tail spreads during landing, its warm red surface becomes much more obvious. The crest can also shift from muted brown to red depending on the angle of the light. The difference between male and female coloring is called sexual dichromatism. The word dichromatism means having two typical color patterns within the same species. Among northern cardinals, adult males usually carry red across most of the body, while adult females combine brown body feathers with smaller areas of red. Both patterns are produced partly through carotenoid pigments gathered from food and processed inside the body. The amount and placement of those pigments differ between the sexes. Female plumage fits well within the places where nesting occurs. Cardinal nests are usually built inside dense shrubs, vines, or low tree branches. A female may spend most of each hour sitting almost motionless above the eggs, often only 1 or 2 meters above the ground. Brown and buff feathers blend with dry stems, bark, shadowed leaves, and old plant material surrounding the nest. This likely reduces how quickly she is noticed by some predators. Color differences have more than one possible cause, however. Camouflage may contribute to female plumage, while hormones, gene activity, mate choice, and competition can also shape how coloration develops over many generations. The red feathers she does possess may carry social information. Researchers have examined color beneath the female's wings, along with the breast, crest, face, and bill. Some of these measurements have been linked with body condition, nesting behavior, reproductive timing, or the amount of parental work performed later in the season. The relationships are often modest and can vary between studies. A brighter bill does not provide a complete report of a bird's health or future behavior. It offers one visible clue among several. The bill can be especially useful because both sexes display it throughout the year. Its color may shift with age, season, nutrition, and the amount of carotenoid pigment available. During courtship or close territorial encounters, another cardinal can see the bill at short range. The crest and facial markings surround it, making changes in posture easy to notice. A raised crest can enlarge the outline of the head. A lowered crest makes the same bird appear smoother and less tense. Body position, movement, and vocal behavior add meaning that color alone cannot provide. The female also plays an active role in defending space. She may chase other females from the breeding territory or react strongly to reflection in glass. Her quieter colors do not indicate a passive life. She selects the nest site, performs most of the construction, incubates the eggs, and helps feed the young after hatching. Those tasks place her at the center of each breeding attempt. Young cardinals begin with a different appearance from either adult. A fledgling usually has brownish plumage that resembles the general tone of an adult female. The crest is present, though it may look shorter or less neat during early growth. Its bill is dark gray or nearly black, rather than red-orange. That dark bill is one of the easiest ways to recognize a recently fledged cardinal. As the young bird grows, the bill gradually changes color. New feathers also appear during its first major molt. Young males begin developing broader areas of red, while young females retain a browner body with red concentrated in the crest, wings, and tail. The transition does not happen in a single day. Patchy young males may show brown juvenile feathers beside newly grown red ones for part of late summer or autumn. A family group can therefore contain several visible stages at once. An adult male may appear fully red. The female carries her mixed brown and red pattern. Their young may still have dark bills and uneven juvenile plumage. Each appearance records a different combination of age, sex, feather growth, and pigment chemistry. The familiar image of a single bright male now becomes a wider signaling system shared across the family. Color helps cardinals identify age, condition, and social position at close range. Sound travels much farther through dense leaves. The female's clearest signal begins when she lifts her head and sends a full song across the thicket. A clear whistle can pass through layers of leaves long before the singer comes into view. The sound is produced in an organ called the syrinx. This small vocal structure sits low in a bird's chest, close to the point where the windpipe divides into two tubes leading toward the lungs. Air moving through the syrinx causes thin tissues to vibrate. Small muscles adjust their tension and position, changing the pitch and shape of the sound. Because the syrinx lies where the airway splits, many songbirds can control the two sides with great precision. That control helps a cardinal produce notes that sound smooth, pure, and almost flute-like. A typical song lasts around 2 to 3 seconds. It may begin with several strong whistles that fall slightly in pitch, followed by a faster ending that resembles a trill. People often remember these patterns with phrases such as cheer, 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 or birdie, birdie, birdie. Those words are only memory aids. The bird is producing a learned sequence of tones rather than speaking human language. Young cardinals develop their songs by listening to adults. This learning process creates variation between individuals and regions. A cardinal in southern Ontario may use some phrases differently from one in Texas or North Carolina. Even neighboring males can have slightly different song collections called repertoires. The details help birds recognize familiar voices within the local population. Male cardinals sing most strongly during the breeding season. A male may climb to an exposed branch near dawn and repeat a phrase many times, allowing the sound to travel across the territory. His voice announces that the area is occupied and helps maintain contact with his mate. Female northern cardinals also sing. Female song was overlooked for many years because early studies of temperate birds often assumed that singing belonged mainly to males. That assumption was partly shaped by the species researchers chose to observe and by attention being focused on loud territorial performances. A female cardinal may sing during courtship, while moving through the territory, or from vegetation close to the nest. Her songs can resemble those of the male, though the timing and social setting may differ. The pair may answer one another from separate parts of a thicket. Their bodies remain hidden, yet each bird receives information about the other's location and activity. Song carries farther than vision in dense vegetation. It can identify the singer, reveal its approximate position, and communicate a level of readiness or agitation. The meaning depends on the phrase, the situation, and the response of nearby birds. Cardinals also use a much shorter sound, commonly described as a chip. This note is sharp and metallic, often lasting only a fraction of a second. A single chip may help a pair remain in contact while feeding. Repeated chips can signal disturbance near a nest, the presence of a predator, or an encounter with another cardinal. The rate and intensity may rise as danger comes closer. Adults also use contact calls around fledglings hidden in vegetation. Song and chip calls therefore serve different ranges and situations. Longer whistles can travel across a territory. Short calls are useful during close movement through cover, where a loud song might reveal too much. One study in Madison, Wisconsin, examined how female song might function near active nests. Researchers followed 13 cardinal pairs during 25 nesting attempts spread across 6 summers. They recorded interactions between females at the nest and males moving through the surrounding territory. The observations suggested that female song could help coordinate food deliveries. A bright red male approaching an open cup may attract attention from predators. Timing his arrival after a signal from the female could reduce unnecessary visits or help him approach when feeding was most useful. This interpretation remains a scientific hypothesis. Researchers cannot translate one whistle into a fixed instruction such as "bring food now." The evidence shows a relationship between female vocal behavior and male care, while the exact information carried by each sound remains harder to separate. Even without a complete translation, the pair's communication system has clear practical value. Dense branches block sight. Nest duties separate the adults for long periods. Young birds later scatter through the understory after leaving the nest. Learned songs and short calls allow family members to coordinate through that visual clutter. The same whistle can travel beyond the pair's immediate space. A neighboring male hears it from another hedge or woodland edge and may answer from his own perch. A sound used to maintain contact within one territory also marks the point where another bird's space begins. From a second perch beyond the shrubs, another male sends back a clear whistle. The exchange may continue for several minutes, with each bird remaining inside its own familiar area. Biologists call this counter-singing. One male sings, a neighbor replies, and both receive information without immediately meeting face-to-face. The learned songs differ slightly between individuals. Pitch, timing, and note order can help a cardinal recognize a bird that has occupied the next territory for weeks or months. Regional differences also develop because young birds learn from the voices around them. A male raised in southern Ontario may therefore develop a somewhat different collection of phrases from one growing up in western Tennessee. During the breeding season, males often sing from exposed positions. A high branch, fence post, utility wire, or treetop allows sound to travel farther than it would from deep inside a hedge. Once the performance ends, the singer may descend toward the low vegetation, where most feeding and nesting take place. The elevated perch acts like a broadcast point above a territory that is largely hidden below. Song communicates presence. It can also reveal that the singer is alert and prepared to defend the area. A neighboring male may respond from his usual perch and remain where he is. When both birds respect the established spacing, the exchange can prevent a costly chase. Fighting uses energy and can damage feathers, feet, eyes, or the bill. A reliable vocal boundary allows each male to spend more time feeding and watching over the breeding area. Cardinals do not maintain identical amounts of space in every habitat. One classic comparison found about 0.74 males per hectare in western Tennessee. A hectare covers 10,000 square meters, a little larger than 2 football fields placed side by side. Near the northern edge of the range in southern Ontario, the same comparison recorded only about 0.012 males per hectare. Those figures describe very different population densities. Food supply, shrub cover, winter conditions, and the number of available birds can all affect how closely territories are packed. A productive patch containing thick vegetation and dependable food may support several males within hearing distance. Sparse habitat can place the nearest neighbor much farther away. Vocal exchanges sometimes fail to maintain that separation, an unfamiliar male may cross the boundary or begin singing from a valuable perch inside the occupied area. The resident then moves closer. His crest rises, his body leans forward, and short chip calls may replace the longer whistles. Repeated approaches can become a chase through branches or across open ground. Direct fighting occurs less often, though cardinals may strike with the bill or grapple briefly when neither bird withdraws. Females also defend breeding space. A female may chase another female away from a nest area or react strongly when she sees what appears to be an intruder nearby. This territorial response explains one of the cardinal's most puzzling behaviors around homes. A window, side mirror, polished metal surface, or strip of chrome can produce a clear reflection. To the bird, the image has the shape, color, and movements of another cardinal. Every display receives an identical display in return. When the real bird approaches, the reflected bird approaches at the same speed. A strike against the glass produces no retreat. The normal signals that would end an encounter never appear. A male may return to the same window repeatedly for days, or even weeks during periods of intense breeding activity. Females can behave in the same way. Covering the reflective surface from the outside usually works better than changing something inside the room, because the reflection forms on the exterior face of the glass. The intensity of this behavior reveals how much value is concentrated inside a territory. Dense shrubs provide concealed nest locations. Open patches nearby hold seeds and fallen fruit. Higher branches offer singing positions, while low cover gives adults and fledglings a place to escape from hawks. The boundary surrounds a working landscape rather than an empty circle drawn around one bird. Its full value appears when a female begins moving through the defended shrubs, examining branch forks and responding to the male's calls. The space maintained through song can now support a pair, and the work of courtship begins to change how both birds use it. Within the defended shrubs, the female begins to change the male's daily pattern. He follows as she moves between low branches, sometimes remaining only a few meters away. His songs become part of a closer exchange, mixed with softer calls and short movements through the vegetation. The raised crest and forward posture used against a rival give way to quieter attention. Courtship in northern cardinals includes song, following, visual display, and repeated periods of close contact. One of its most recognizable behaviors is courtship feeding. The male picks up a seed, insect, or small piece of fruit and carries it toward the female. She turns toward him and opens her bill. He places the food directly inside, sometimes while both birds remain balanced on the same narrow branch. The transfer may last only a second, though it connects several useful parts of the breeding relationship. It demonstrates that the male can locate and handle food. It also keeps the pair close while they learn one another's movements and calls. Similar feeding can continue after nesting begins, when the female spends long periods incubating eggs and has fewer chances to forage. Northern cardinals are commonly described as socially monogamous. Social monogamy means that one male and one female form the visible working pair for a breeding attempt. They share a territory and coordinate the labor required to produce young. Some pairs remain together through more than one breeding season, especially when both birds survive and return to the same general area. Their partnership still has to be maintained through behavior. The birds continue using calls, following movements, food transfers, and shared defense, rather than relying on a permanent bond that requires no further effort. The jobs performed by each partner are related, but unequal at different stages. The female chooses the final nest location and performs nearly all direct construction. She later carries out most incubation because her body develops the close skin contact needed to warm the eggs. The male often brings food while she sits and watches the surrounding territory for intruders. After hatching, both adults gather insects and deliver them to the young. Parental work continues after the fledglings leave the nest and scatter through nearby cover. This visible pair structure does not guarantee that every chick in the nest was genetically produced by the male helping to raise it. Genetic studies of songbirds have shown that mating can occasionally occur outside the social pair. Northern cardinals also show evidence of this extra pair mating. A female may produce an egg fertilized by a different male while continuing to nest and raise young with her social partner. The frequency can vary among populations and breeding seasons. For that reason, socially monogamous describes the arrangement more accurately than the familiar claim that cardinals always mate for life. The partnership is best understood through the work it organizes. A territory must be watched while food is gathered. An incubating female benefits from deliveries that shorten her absences from the eggs. Later, hungry nestlings may require many feeding visits across each hour of daylight. Coordination allows two adults to divide those pressures while keeping the breeding attempt inside one defended area. The female soon begins spending more time inside the thickest parts of that area. She pauses where several stems cross and steps carefully along horizontal branches. A fork may hold her weight, but offer too little cover. Another location may be hidden by leaves, yet sway too strongly in the wind. Vines can provide concealment, while thorny shrubs may slow the approach of some predators. The male often remains nearby as she inspects these places. He may follow from branch to branch, sing from a higher perch, or bring another food item during the search. His presence helps maintain the territory, while she gives increasing attention to a very small part of it. An area that may cover thousands of square meters is gradually reduced to one shrub, then one cluster of branches, and finally one supporting fork. The pair has secured space, established contact, and begun dividing the work ahead. Their first nesting success will depend on whether the female can find a place where an open cup remains supported, shaded, and difficult to see. The female moves slowly through the lower branches, pausing wherever several stems cross. She may inspect a dense shrub beside a fence, a young sapling at the woodland edge, or a vine tangle growing through an older tree. Briars, honeysuckle, dogwood, hawthorn, grapevine, and evergreen branches can all provide the kind of support she needs. The exact plant matters less than the structure around it. A useful site contains several branches close enough to hold a cup, along with leaves or tangled stems that break up its outline. Northern cardinals are open cup nesters. Their nests rest in vegetation with the top exposed. They do not normally place eggs inside tree holes, and they generally do not use enclosed birdhouses. A wooden box may attract chickadees, wrens, bluebirds, or tree swallows, because those species naturally seek cavities. The cardinal depends on a platform made from living branches. Most nests are found between about 1 and 15 feet above the ground. Many sit near the lower half of that range, where shrubs and vines are thickest. A nest 3 or 4 feet high may be easy for a person to look into. Yet dense leaves can make it difficult to notice from only a few steps away. Other females choose higher forks in saplings or young trees. There is no single correct height. The surrounding cover, branch strength, and local predators all affect the value of a site. The female tests each location with her feet and body. A fork must support her weight during construction and later hold the female, several eggs, and a growing brood. Thin branches may bend too far under that load. A heavy horizontal limb may be stable but too exposed. Several flexible stems woven close together can provide support, while allowing the entire plant to move gently in the wind. Concealment is only one part of the decision. The nest needs airflow so moisture can leave after rain. Water must drain through the bottom rather than collect inside the cup. Shade can reduce heat during warm afternoons, especially in the southern parts of the Cardinals range. A sheltered position also limits direct exposure to strong wind. The adults still require a clear route through the vegetation. They may approach the nest many times each day while carrying food. A route that is too open can reveal the location to jays, crows, squirrels, snakes, or other nest predators. A route blocked by dense stems slows every arrival and makes escape harder. The female therefore searches for a middle ground, where the nest remains concealed but reachable. She may enter one side of a shrub, move along an inner branch, and reach the nest from below. The male often uses a different nearby perch while watching the area or waiting to deliver food. These repeated paths can become familiar to the pair over the days that follow. Plant density often matters more than plant identity. Native shrubs can provide fruit, insects, and sturdy nesting branches. Vines create overlapping layers that hide movement. Evergreens offer cover before deciduous leaves open in spring. Ornamental plants in gardens can also support nests when their branches form a thick enough network. A sparse bush with widely separated stems may offer less protection than a mixed hedge containing several plant heights. This difference helps explain why 2 yards with similar feeders can support cardinals in very different ways. 1 yard may contain a wide lawn, a few isolated trees, and a feeder filled with sunflower seed. Adults can visit for food, but the open space provides little shelter for nesting or fledglings. Another yard may contain a hedge, several shrubs, low ground cover, and a small tree with vines climbing through it. That layered vegetation supplies feeding areas, escape cover, and possible nest supports within a short flight. The female does not measure these qualities in the way a person might compare plans or distances. Her choices emerge through repeated inspection. She steps onto a branch, shifts her weight, studies the surrounding cover, and leaves. Another site may hold her attention longer. She may return several times before carrying any material. Once a location is accepted, the scale of the breeding effort contracts again. A territory covering thousands of square meters now centers on a branch fork only a few centimeters wide. That fork provides the fixed support. The female must turn it into a nest using twigs, bark, grasses, and softer fibers gathered one piece at a time. A stiff twig is placed across the chosen fork and held between 2 living branches. The female returns with another piece, then pushes it into the growing frame with her bill. Early materials are often coarse and firm. Small twigs, strips of bark, dry leaves, and thicker stems create an outer platform that can resist bending beneath the weight that will soon rest on it. The arrangement may look loose during the first day. Pieces extend at uneven angles, and some fall away before they become fixed. The female adjusts them through repeated short visits. She pulls one stem through another, presses bark beneath a branch, and removes material that will not remain in place. Most direct construction is performed by the female. The male may stay nearby, follow her through the shrubs, or occasionally carry material, though he usually does little of the actual assembly. His presence allows her to spend more time gathering, while the surrounding territory remains watched. A cardinal nest commonly takes between 3 and 9 days to complete. The exact schedule changes with weather, the distance to building materials, and whether the female is constructing her first nest of the season or replacing one that failed. Rain can delay work and soak the materials already in place. Warm, dry days allow repeated trips from the ground, nearby vines, or loose bark on surrounding plants. As the outer frame becomes stable, the materials grow finer. Flexible stems and vine pieces can bend around the cup without snapping. Bark strips wrap through gaps and create friction where they cross other fibers. Rootlets, grasses, pine needles, and fine plant strands fill the open spaces between the larger pieces. Each material contributes a different physical quality. A rigid twig keeps the nest from folding inward. A flexible fiber ties neighboring pieces together. Rough surfaces catch against one another and reduce slipping when wind moves the supporting branches. The nest works as a composite structure, meaning that several kinds of material combine to perform better than any single material could alone. A platform made only from dry leaves would shift and collapse. A bowl made entirely from stiff twigs would leave large gaps and provide an uneven surface. Mixed layers create both support and flexibility. The female shapes the inner bowl with her own body. She settles into the unfinished nest, lowers her breast, and turns slowly. Her feet press outward while her chest applies downward pressure. Repeated shaping rounds the interior and pushes projecting fibers toward the walls. This behavior gives the cup dimensions suited to the bird that will later sit inside it. The finished nest is usually about 2 to 3 inches high and close to 4 inches across. Its inner bowl measures roughly 3 inches in diameter. These numbers can vary because the supporting branches and available materials differ from one location to another. A nest built in a grapevine may spread differently from one held inside a dense evergreen. The final structure rarely looks polished. A strip of bark may hang from one side. Several twigs may extend beyond the rim. Dry leaves can make the exterior resemble the surrounding plant litter. That irregular appearance may help break up the nest's outline among branches and shadow. Inside, the finer lining provides a smoother surface for eggs and reduces direct contact with sharp material. The open spaces within the outer layers also allow water to drain after rain. Air can move through the structure, helping damp fibers dry rather than remaining wet beneath the female. The nest is temporary by design. Cardinals generally build a new one for a later brood instead of returning to the same cup. A structure may become damaged by wind, stretched by growing nestlings, contaminated by insects, or familiar to predators that discovered the area. Fresh construction allows the female to choose another location and distribute nesting attempts across the territory. The completed cup must remain strong for only a small part of the year. Within days, it may hold several eggs. Less than 2 weeks after incubation begins, those eggs can contain fully formed chicks ready to break through their shells. The loose collection of twigs and fibers has become the support for one of the fastest transformations in the cardinal's life. Soon, the first egg rests inside the finished cup. A female northern cardinal usually lays 1 egg per day until the clutch is complete. Most nests contain 3 or 4 eggs, though a clutch may range from 2 to 5. Each egg is small enough to fit easily inside a human palm. Its shell may appear pale grey, greenish, bluish, or warm buff, with brown, grey, or lavender speckles scattered across the surface. The markings vary between females and even among eggs in the same nest. Their exact purpose is difficult to separate from the chemistry of shell formation, so the pattern should not be treated as perfect camouflage. Inside the shell, several parts already have distinct jobs. The yolk contains much of the stored fat and many of the nutrients that will support growth. Around it lies the albumin, commonly called egg white. Albumin supplies water and protein while cushioning the developing embryo. Thin membranes beneath the shell create additional barriers against drying and contamination. At the broad end of the egg, a small airspace gradually forms as moisture leaves through the shell. The shell feels solid, yet it contains thousands of microscopic pores. Oxygen passes inward through those pores. Carbon dioxide and water vapor move outward. This gas exchange allows living cells inside the egg to continue using energy. Once laying is nearly complete, the female settles more steadily over the clutch. During the breeding season, she develops a brood patch on the underside of her body. A brood patch is an area where feathers become sparse and the skin receives an increased blood supply. Warm blood flowing close to the surface allows heat to pass directly from her body into the eggs. Feathers surrounding the patch help hold that warmth near the nest. The female performs most of the incubation. Her mate commonly remains nearby, watches the territory, and brings food while she sits. These deliveries shorten the time she must leave the eggs uncovered. She still departs briefly to feed, drink, stretch, and remove waste. During those absences, the embryos continue developing, as long as the eggs do not cool too deeply. The female also shifts and turns the eggs with her bill and body. Turning changes which side faces upward and helps maintain normal relationships among the yolk, embryo, and surrounding membranes. Without regular movement, developing tissues may press against one area for too long or attach where they should remain free. The egg may look unchanged from the outside, while growth inside advances hour by hour. Development began soon after fertilization, when one cell started dividing into 2, then 4, followed by many more. Those cells gradually organized into layers that would form different tissues. A tiny heart began beating early in development. Blood vessels spread across the yolk, creating a transport system that carried oxygen and nutrients toward the growing body. The head became distinct from the trunk. Dark areas formed where the eyes were developing. Small limb buds lengthened into wings and legs. The bill began as soft tissue before taking on its recognizable shape. Feather tracts also appeared. These are organized lines of skin where feathers will later grow. The embryo does not begin as a miniature finished cardinal. Its body emerges through a timed sequence in which cells divide, move, specialize, and connect. Genes provide instructions for building proteins, while conditions inside the egg allow those instructions to unfold. Heat from the female keeps chemical reactions moving within a suitable range. The yolk supplies fuel. Oxygen entering through the shell supports metabolism, the process through which cells release usable energy. For a northern cardinal, incubation usually lasts about 11 to 13 days. Near the end of that period, the chick fills most of the available space. It draws the remaining yolk into its body, where those nutrients can continue supporting it after hatching. The airspace at the broad end becomes especially important. The chick breaks through the inner membrane and begins breathing from that small pocket before opening the outer shell. A temporary hardpoint called the egg tooth sits near the tip of the upper bill. The chick presses this point against the shell from inside. Small cracks form around one end of the egg as the bird turns and pushes. Hatching may take many hours because the chick must pause between bursts of effort. When the shell finally opens, the period of hidden construction is complete. The nest now holds a wet, nearly bare chick with weak muscles, limited control of body temperature, and an immediate need for food. The newly hatched chick lies low against the bottom of the cup, surrounded by pieces of shell and the warmth of its siblings. Its skin is mostly bare, with only a small amount of thin down. The eyes remain closed or partly closed, the neck is weak, and the legs cannot yet support the body. Biologists describe this condition as altricial development. An altricial bird hatches at an early stage and depends almost completely on its parents for warmth, protection, and food. The chick has very little insulation, so it loses heat quickly whenever the female leaves. She settles over the brood with her breast and belly covering the small bodies beneath her. This behavior is called brooding. Warmth from her skin keeps the chicks within the temperature range needed for digestion, cell growth, and normal organ function. During cool weather, much of her time may be spent covering them. As the nestlings grow feathers and begin producing more heat of their own, she can remain away for longer feeding trips. Both parents soon begin moving repeatedly between the nest and nearby vegetation. A returning adult may carry a caterpillar folded across the bill, a small beetle, a grasshopper, or a spider gathered from leaves and stems. These foods differ from the dry seeds commonly associated with adult cardinals. Growing young need large amounts of protein to build muscle, internal organs, skin, and feathers. Invertebrates also provide fat for concentrated energy, minerals for developing bones, and water held within soft tissues. A sunflower seed can support an adult that already possesses a complete body. A nestling is producing new tissue at a remarkable rate and requires food suited to construction. The parent lands near the nest rather than always flying directly to its rim. A short approach through inner branches may make the final movement less obvious to predators. As the adult arrives, the nestlings lift their heads and open their bills. The inside of each mouth forms a bright gape, the wide colored opening displayed during begging. Movement, sound, and the size of the open gape help direct the parent toward a hungry chick. Food may be placed deep into the mouth, where swallowing begins almost immediately. The youngest nestlings cannot tear apart large prey by themselves. Adults may soften, divide, or reposition an insect before delivering it. Feeding visits continue throughout the daylight hours, with the pace changing according to weather, brood size, and the age of the chicks. Cold or heavy rain can reduce insect activity and make each item harder to find. Warm days often bring caterpillars and flying insects into easier reach. Changes become visible within only a few days. The eyes open, allowing the chicks to react to shadows and movement above the nest. Tiny feather sheaths appear along organized tracts of skin. Each sheath looks like a narrow pin before the feather opens from its protective covering. The wings lengthen, the feet grow stronger, and the body begins filling the cup that once held several small eggs. A nest that seems spacious at hatching can become crowded before the young are ready to leave. Rapid growth also creates a steady problem of waste. Nestlings produce small packages called fecal sacs. A thin membrane surrounds the waste, allowing an adult to pick it up with the bill. The parent may carry the sac away from the nest or swallow it when the chicks are very young. Removing waste limits build up inside the cup and may reduce odors or visible signs that could attract some predators. The system keeps the nest cleaner during a period when several growing birds are fed many times each day. Young cardinals commonly remain in the nest for only about 7 to 13 days after hatching. Their bodies change enormously during that short period. Yet fledging does not mean that development is finished. The first feathers provide partial insulation and enough flight surface for brief movement. Wing muscles remain weak, landings are uncertain, and the dark bill still belongs to a juvenile that cannot process every food efficiently. A chick may stand at the rim, grip the woven fibers, and move onto a nearby branch with a short burst of its wings. Another may drop into low vegetation and climb upward through stems. The nest that organized every feeding visit is suddenly empty. Its former occupants are now scattered through shrubs and ground cover, still calling for food while the parents search for each hidden voice. A young cardinal may reach its first branch with little more than a jump and several quick wing beats. Its landing often looks uncertain. The feet grip a thin stem, the tail shifts for balance, and the wings remain partly open until the body becomes steady. During the first days outside the nest, these short flights usually cover only a few meters. A fledgling may drop toward the ground, climb through low branches, or remain hidden inside a shrub, while its flight muscles continue developing. Its appearance still differs clearly from that of an adult. Most of the plumage is brown, with soft and uneven feathers that have only recently opened from their sheaths. The bill remains dark grey or nearly black. Red-orange colouring will develop later as the young bird grows and molts into more mature plumage. Leaving the nest, therefore, marks a change in location, rather than independence. The fledgling still depends on its parents for much of its food. It may crouch on a branch, vibrate its wings, and produce repeated begging calls when an adult approaches. The bright red male is especially easy to follow as he moves through the shrubs carrying an insect or softened seed. A female may arrive from another direction, guided by the same calls. The siblings often spread apart after fledging. One may remain inside a dense vine tangle, while another hides beneath low evergreen branches. This separation can reduce the chance that one predator will find the entire brood in a single place. It also creates a larger search area for the parents. Contact calls help adults locate each young bird among overlapping leaves and stems. The fledglings answer with persistent begging notes, then become quieter when a predator passes or an adult gives an alarm call. Feeding continues while the young begin practicing adult skills. A juvenile may pick up a seed, rotate it clumsily, and drop it before the hull opens. The dark bill already has the basic conical shape needed for cracking food, though strength and coordination are still developing. Handling a seed requires the tongue to position it correctly, while the upper and lower bill apply pressure at a useful angle. Adults perform this movement so smoothly that the separate steps are difficult to see. A young bird may repeat the attempt many times before it can remove the hull efficiently. Insects remain important during this learning period. Caterpillars and other soft-bodied prey can be swallowed with less mechanical work than a hard seed. Parents may continue delivering beetles, spiders, and pieces of larger insects, while the fledglings explore fruit and fallen plant material for themselves. Each successful attempt reduces their dependence a little. Meanwhile, the female may begin another breeding effort. Northern cardinals commonly attempt more than one brood during a season. 2 broods are possible across much of the range, and 3 may occur where spring begins early and warm conditions continue well into summer. The schedule can include a replacement nest after failure or a later brood following a successful first attempt. These paths have different starting points, yet both require a new nest because cardinals generally do not reuse the old cup. The male often assumes much of the care for the first group of fledglings, while the female searches for another branch fork. He continues responding to their calls, delivering food, and guiding them through the defended vegetation. At the same time, she gathers fresh twigs and bark, or begins laying another clutch. The pair's work now follows 2 biological clocks. Older young are learning to fly and feed. A second set of eggs may already be forming or beginning development nearby. This overlap helps cardinals use the limited warm season efficiently. Waiting until the first brood became completely independent would shorten the time available for another nesting attempt. The strategy also divides parental energy across several demands. The male may travel repeatedly between scattered fledglings. The female must replace nutrients used to produce eggs while building and incubating again. Both birds continue watching for predators and defending the territory. Over the following weeks, the first young become quieter and more capable. Their flights lengthen. The dark bill begins changing toward the orange-red color of adulthood, and new feathers gradually replace the softer juvenile covering. Food that once arrived entirely from a parent is increasingly found among fallen leaves, fruiting shrubs, and seed-bearing plants. As the fledglings learn to use their heavy bills, the family's survival becomes tied to a food system that changes with every season. A young cardinal watches an adult lift a seed from the ground and turn it sideways inside the bill. The seed is held near the stronger base of the beak rather than at the narrow tip. Its tongue shifts the seed until the shell rests at a useful angle. Muscles attached to the jaws then close the upper and lower bill around it. Pressure splits the outer hull, exposing the softer center. The cardinal removes the edible part and lets the empty shell fall. A small pile of husks beneath a feeder is evidence of this repeated mechanical work. The bird has processed each seed rather than swallowing it whole. Young cardinals must learn the proper grip and angle through practice. A fledgling may pick up a seed, move it several times, then lose it among the leaves. As jaw strength and coordination improve, the same sequence becomes faster. The short, deep bill concentrates force into a compact space, allowing an adult to open foods that would be difficult for a bird with a long, narrow beak. Seeds form a large part of the adult cardinal's diet. Wild grasses produce small grains along woodland edges and roadsides. Weedy plants, such as ragweed, offer seeds during late summer and autumn. Cardinals also feed around agricultural fields, where kernels and other grains may remain after harvest. Gardens provide seed heads from sunflowers and many flowering plants if those heads are left standing after bloom. Much of this feeding occurs on or close to the ground. A cardinal may hop through leaf litter beneath a shrub, turning its head toward fallen seeds or small movements among the stems. Low feeding places allow access to abundant food, while nearby vegetation provides an escape route. Fruit becomes important as different plants ripen. Dogwoods produce small fruits that may remain available into autumn. Wild grapes grow in clusters along vines, while mulberries offer soft fruit during late spring or summer. Elderberries form dark groups of small berries that can be swallowed or broken apart with the bill. These foods supply carbohydrates that can be converted into usable energy. Their soft tissues also contain water and a mixture of vitamins and plant chemicals. Some fruits contribute carotenoid pigments, or the chemical starting materials used in feather coloration. A cardinal eating fruit during the months before molt may therefore be gathering part of the raw material later placed into new feathers. Food choice changes again when reproduction begins. Adult cardinals continue eating seeds and fruit, though their nestlings receive a diet dominated by insects and other small invertebrates. Caterpillars are especially useful because their soft bodies contain concentrated protein and are easy for young chicks to swallow. Beetles, grasshoppers, and spiders add further sources of fat, water, and minerals. An adult that spent winter cracking seeds may spend a summer morning searching the underside of leaves for moving prey. This dietary shift follows the needs of the growing brood. An adult body mainly requires fuel for maintenance, movement, and warmth. A nestling is building muscles, internal organs, and thousands of feathers within a few days. Protein-rich animal food supplies many of the materials needed for that rapid construction. The same landscape can support both diets when it contains several layers of plant life. Grasses and seed-bearing weeds feed adults. Shrubs produce fruit and protective cover. Leaves support caterpillars and other insects that later become food for young birds. A simplified yard containing only short lawn and one feeder supplies a narrower portion of this system. Feeders are still useful, especially during cold weather or when natural foods become scarce. Northern cardinals readily take sunflower seeds, cracked corn, and safflower. Their broad bodies and ground-feeding habits often lead them to collect food spilled beneath hanging feeders. Platform feeders and wide trays may also be easier for them to use than small perches designed for lighter birds. Reliable feeder food can reduce the time needed to find calories, particularly near the northern edge of the range. It remains one part of a much larger annual diet. Wild foods change in waves across the year. Spring brings new insects and early plant growth. Summer supports nestlings while fruit begins to ripen. Autumn produces abundant seeds as adult cardinals replace worn feathers. By winter, insects have become scarce. Many fruits have dried or fallen, and snow may cover food on the ground. The cardinal remains inside the same general landscape as that abundance narrows. Its bill can still open hard seeds, though every meal must now help support a body losing heat into cold air through each hour of the day and night. By late autumn, the hours of useful daylight have narrowed. Morning arrives later, dusk settles earlier, and each feeding period must provide enough energy to carry a cardinal through the coming night. The bird's first defense against cold is its plumage. Feathers slow heat loss by trapping thin pockets of air close to the skin. Air transfers heat poorly when it remains still, so this layer acts as insulation around the body. A cardinal can increase that insulation by fluffing its feathers. Small muscles lift the outer feathers away from the skin, creating more space for trapped air. The bird may then appear rounder than it did during summer, even though its actual body size has changed very little. Wind reduces the value of this insulation by replacing warm trapped air with colder moving air. Dense shrubs and evergreen trees therefore become important winter shelters. A cedar, spruce, pine, or thick hedge can block part of the wind while hiding the bird from predators. Cardinals often move into these protected places during severe weather and around dusk. Their winter sleeping sites are called roosts. A roost may be deep inside tangled branches, where the surrounding vegetation slows moving air and reduces exposure to falling snow. Body posture helps conserve additional heat. A resting cardinal may crouch until its belly feathers partly cover the legs and feet. The bill can be turned backward and tucked beneath shoulder feathers. Bare parts such as the bill and toes lose heat more quickly than feathered skin, so covering them reduces the amount of exposed surface. The legs also contain closely arranged blood vessels that help limit heat loss. Warm blood traveling toward the feet passes near cooler blood returning toward the body. Some heat moves between these vessels before it reaches the exposed toes. Even with insulation and shelter, the bird must continue producing heat inside its body. One major process is shivering thermogenesis. Thermogenesis means the production of heat. During shivering, muscles contract rapidly, without creating useful movement. The chemical energy stored in food is released inside muscle cells, and much of it becomes heat. A cardinal may appear still on a branch while tiny contractions are occurring beneath its feathers. This heating system consumes fuel. The bird cannot remain warm through insulation alone because feathers only slow the escape of heat already produced by metabolism. Metabolism includes the chemical reactions that keep cells operating and release energy from food. Cold weather increases the amount of energy needed to maintain a stable internal temperature. A small bird faces an especially demanding balance because its body has a large surface area compared with its volume. Surface area is the amount of outer body exposed to the environment. Volume represents the heat-producing tissue and stored fuel contained inside. As body size decreases, exposed surface becomes proportionally larger. A cardinal, weighing less than 50 grams, can therefore lose heat much faster relative to its size than a deer or a human. Its stored fat is limited as well. Carrying too much extra weight would make flight more difficult and increase the energy required to escape predators. Winter feeding becomes a daily cycle of replacing what the previous cold period consumed. Seeds provide concentrated energy through fats and carbohydrates. Fruit can add sugar and water when it remains available. Feeders sometimes become especially valuable after snow covers natural food on the ground, or freezing rain seals seeds beneath a hard layer of ice. The social structure of the population also changes. Breeding territories that were strongly defended in spring become less rigid during autumn and winter. Pairs may remain near one another, though groups often gather where food and shelter are dependable. Winter flocks can contain around a dozen birds, and sometimes several dozen. A study in Kentucky found that cardinal flock size increased during colder conditions. Grouping may help birds locate productive feeding areas because the movements of one individual can draw others toward food. More eyes can also improve the chance of detecting an approaching hawk or cat. Competition continues within the flock, especially around limited food. Dominant birds may displace others from favored positions, and individuals still preserve enough distance to feed safely. The temporary group reflects a seasonal adjustment, rather than the permanent loss of territorial behavior. As spring approaches, flocking decreases and pairs return to defended breeding spaces. The male in the snowy shrub is therefore balancing several systems at once. His feathers hold warm air near the skin. Muscle activity generates heat from stored food. Protected branches reduce wind exposure, while winter companions alter how food and danger are found. That balance must be restored through every short day. Many adults succeed and remain in the same region year after year. Earlier in life, each one passed through a far more exposed stage, confined to a shallow nest where cold, predators, and hidden visitors could end a breeding attempt within moments. An open cup only a few feet above the ground remains vulnerable from almost every direction. A snake can climb through branches without disturbing much vegetation. A squirrel may approach along the same limbs that support the nest. Raccoons can reach into shrubs at night, while blue jays and American crows may search during daylight for eggs or newly hatched young. Domestic cats add another danger close to homes, especially after fledglings leave the nest and spend their first days low in vegetation. The nest concealment helps, though no branch fork can block every predator. Different animals locate nests in different ways. A jay may watch the repeated movements of adult cardinals carrying food. A snake can follow scent, movement, or the shape of a cup hidden among leaves. Mammals may search through dense shrubs systematically, using touch and smell at close range. Even a well-covered nest can become easier to find when adults travel along the same approach path many times each hour. Researchers in southwestern Ohio followed 121 northern cardinal nests during the breeding seasons of 1991 and 1992. Their estimate of nesting success was only about 15%. The calculation used a method designed to account for nests found at different stages, since a nest discovered near fledging has already survived longer than one found during egg laying. That result belongs to one place and two seasons. Other populations may experience different weather, vegetation, predator communities, and breeding success. Still, several long-term studies in Ohio have identified predation as the leading cause of cardinal nest failure. In one research system, 21 predator species were documented taking cardinal nests. That number reflects the wide range of animals capable of reaching an open cup. Predators differ in size and behavior, so a feature that slows one species may have little effect on another. Thorny stems may discourage a large mammal, while allowing a small snake to pass between them. A nest placed higher above the ground may avoid some threats and become more visible to birds searching from above. Dense leaves can hide the cup while also limiting the parent's view of an approaching animal. Nest site selection therefore reduces risk without removing it. A second danger can arrive without destroying the eggs already present. The brown-headed cowbird follows a breeding strategy called brood parasitism. a female cowbird lays an egg in the nest of another bird and leaves the host parents to incubate and feed the chick. Cowbirds evolved this behavior alongside the movements of large grazing animals, following herds across open land where staying in one place to raise young would have limited access to changing feeding areas. Today, female cowbirds search for active nests by watching adult birds and moving through suitable habitat. A cowbird egg often hatches quickly, and the chick may grow faster than some of its nestmates. Its wide gape and strong begging can draw a large share of parental food. Northern cardinals are large enough to raise cowbird young in some nests, though the added chick can increase competition for space and feeding. One study examining 115 cardinal nests found that 48% had been parasitized by brown-headed cowbirds. Among those nests, the average was about 1.3 cowbird eggs. That figure also comes from a specific study population and should not be treated as a universal rate across the cardinal's entire range. Local cowbird numbers, landscape structure, and nest timing can produce very different outcomes. The cardinal's response to these losses appears in the pace of its breeding season. A failed pair can begin searching for another site within the same territory. The female builds a fresh cup rather than repairing or reusing the old one. A new location changes the approach routes, surrounding cover, and group of predators most likely to encounter it. Pairs that successfully raise one brood may still begin another attempt later in the season. Several nests spread across different weeks, and shrubs give reproduction more chances to succeed than one heavily defended structure could provide. This strategy consumes time and energy. Each replacement requires new materials, another clutch, and renewed incubation. Natural selection has still favored repeated effort because no open cup design can guarantee safety. The dense shrubs surrounding these temporary nests became much more common as people divided forests and grasslands into farms, roads, gardens, and young regrowing edges. Beyond the nest shrub, the surrounding landscape may look ordinary. A field meets a line of trees. A drainage ditch carries water beside a road. A garden fence separates a lawn from a patch of vines. For a northern cardinal, these boundaries can contain more useful structure than the shaded interior of an old forest. Inside a mature closed canopy woodland, the crowns of tall trees capture most of the sunlight. Only a smaller amount reaches the ground. The lower layer may contain scattered ferns, young trees, and shade-tolerant plants, though dense fruiting shrubs can be limited. Where the canopy opens, conditions change quickly. Sunlight warms the soil and reaches leaves close to the ground. Grasses rise through bare patches. Vines spread across fallen trunks and low branches. Fast-growing shrubs produce flowers, fruit, seeds, and shelter. Insects gather around the fresh plant growth. This meeting place between two different habitats is called an ecological edge. A forest beside a meadow forms one kind of edge. The border between a marsh and dry ground forms another. Yards, railway corridors, stream banks, roadsides, and farm hedgerows create many smaller versions. Cardinals use these places because several needs can be met within a short flight. Open ground offers fallen seeds and insects. Dense vegetation provides escape cover and nest supports. Higher trees or utility lines supply exposed song perches above the shrubs. Many edges form through a process called ecological succession. Succession is the gradual change in a plant community after a disturbance. a storm may knock down trees. Fire can open part of a forest. Farming removes established vegetation, while an abandoned field begins growing again after cultivation ends. During the early stages, sunlight reaches the ground and fast-growing plants take advantage of the open space. Annual weeds may appear first, followed by grasses, briars, shrubs, and young trees. This stage is called early succession. It may last for years or decades before taller trees close the canopy again. Northern cardinals are strongly associated with the dense understory produced during these middle stages. Their preferred habitat often appears where land has been disturbed, but still retains layers of vegetation. A completely cleared lot offers little protection. A narrow strip of shrubs along its edge may support feeding and movement. Hedgerows between farms can function as covered pathways connecting woodlots that would otherwise be separated by open fields. Drainage corridors often support willows, vines, and moisture-loving plants, even when the surrounding land is heavily developed. Urban parks reproduce parts of the same pattern. A mowed field may border a wooded creek. Ornamental shrubs can create low cover around paths and buildings. Suburban gardens add fruiting plants, evergreen hedges, and bird feeders. These features helped cardinals settle close to homes, especially where several yards together formed a connected network of vegetation. Research in urban forests along rivers has found cardinals associated with denser understory growth. The same work also linked their presence with warmer minimum temperatures during January. A thicket therefore helps in more than one season. Spring branches support nests. Summer leaves hold insects. Autumn shrubs offer fruit, while winter stems block part of the wind. Human development can create these useful conditions while adding serious hazards. Windows reflect sky and vegetation, causing birds to fly towards surfaces they cannot recognize as solid. Domestic cats hunt adults and newly fledged young close to the ground. Traffic, artificial light, and constant noise alter the environment around feeding and nesting sites. Pesticides may reduce the insects needed by growing chicks. The value of a suburb depends on its exact structure, rather than the simple presence of houses. A neighborhood containing mature trees, thick hedges, native shrubs, and connected green corridors can provide many cardinal resources. A similar area converted into wide lawns, isolated ornamental trees, and bare pavement removes much of the cover that makes those resources usable. Disturbance creates opportunity only while enough vegetation remains. Cardinals benefit from sunlight reaching low plants. Their survival still depends on those plants being allowed to form dense, layered cover. Across eastern North America, farms, towns, abandoned fields, and suburban growth produced enormous amounts of edge habitat during the 19th and 20th centuries. Feeders added dependable winter calories, while planted evergreens offered shelter during cold weather. As these features appeared beyond the cardinals' older northern limits, scattered birds found places where they could survive the winter and raise young. Each successful pair moved the edge of the species range a little farther across the map. The northern edge of the cardinals' range did not always reach as far into Canada as it does today. For much of recorded history, the species was centered farther south, especially through the southeastern and central United States. In Ontario, its older stronghold lay within the Carolinian region, the warmer band of forest and farmland near Lake Erie and the lower Great Lakes. Places such as Windsor, London, and the Niagara Peninsula offered milder winters than most of the province. Cardinals living there had access to dense farm hedges, river valleys, towns, and sheltered woodland edges. Over time, scattered birds began appearing farther north and east. A range expansion develops through many small movements. Young cardinals leave the territory where they were raised and search for their own space. Most do not travel across half a continent. An individual may settle only a modest distance beyond the established population. When it survives the winter and raises young, the new location becomes part of the breeding range. Some of those young later disperse beyond it. Repeated across decades, short movements can shift the boundary by hundreds of kilometers. The Canadian increase became especially noticeable during the second half of the 20th century. Long-term monitoring shows a dramatic rise since around 1970. Cardinals spread beyond southwestern Ontario into the eastern part of the province, including the Ottawa region and communities along the St. Lawrence River. Breeding populations also became more established in southern Quebec. Farther east, sightings and nesting records increased through parts of New Brunswick and Nova Scotia. This movement did not follow one simple cause. Winter temperature placed an important limit on earlier populations. A small resident bird must find enough food each day to replace the energy lost overnight. When minimum temperatures rise, the coldest periods become less costly to survive. A slightly milder January can reduce the number of hours during which a cardinal must burn energy at its highest rate. Weather still changes sharply from year to year, so one warm winter cannot establish a permanent population by itself. Food and shelter must remain available after the temperature falls again. The growth of towns and suburbs supplied both. People planted cedar hedges, ornamental shrubs, and evergreen trees around homes. Roads, farms, and expanding communities created long strips of edge habitat. Abandoned fields passed through years of dense shrub growth before becoming woodland. Bird feeding added a dependable source of sunflower seed, safflower, cracked corn, and spilled grain during winter. A feeder could be especially valuable after snow-covered wild seeds or freezing rain sealed food beneath ice. Hedgerows connected small woodlots across agricultural land. Stream corridors carried shrubs through towns and between neighborhoods. These narrow routes allowed cardinals to move while remaining close to cover. A bird reaching a new settlement could find food, shelter from wind, and a possible breeding site within the same few blocks. Climate helped make northern winters more survivable. Human-built habitat increased the number of places where surviving birds could remain and reproduce. The two influences reinforced one another. A warmer winter had greater value where seed was available. A feeder had greater value when nearby shrubs provided safe roosting cover. Range maps slowly recorded the result. A cardinal herd in an Ontario town during the 1940s might have been unusual enough to attract attention. By the early 21st century, the same species had become a regular backyard bird across much of southern Ontario. People in eastern Ontario and southern Quebec could encounter cardinals through every season. Populations in the maritime provinces remained more scattered, though their presence became increasingly familiar. The expansion continues unevenly. Severe winters can reduce survival near the northern boundary. Some areas contain abundant feeders, but too little dense vegetation. Other places provide excellent cover, while food, becomes difficult to find after heavy snow. A population becomes established only when enough adults survive, find partners, and produce young over repeated years. The red bird beside a Canadian window can therefore represent a fairly recent chapter in local natural history. Its ancestors may have occupied landscapes hundreds of kilometers farther south, only a few generations earlier. Their gradual movement followed warming winters, regrowing vegetation, expanding suburbs, and a growing culture of backyard bird feeding. Arrival in towns changed the cardinal's daily surroundings as much as it changed the map. Its songs began passing through traffic noise. Territorial birds encountered windows and mirrors, while nighttime streets introduced artificial light. Feeders placed the species within a few meters of people, whose routines the birds could gradually learn. A cardinal, waiting near a familiar feeder, may seem to recognize the household around it. The bird remains in a nearby shrub while a door opens, watches seed being poured into the tray, and approaches once the person steps away. After enough peaceful repetitions, the distance between bird and human may gradually shrink. This change is called habituation. Habituation is a form of learning in which an animal reacts less strongly to something that repeatedly proves harmless. A closing door may once have sent the cardinal deep into cover. Weeks later, the same sound may produce only a brief pause. The bird has updated its estimate of danger through experience. Predictability makes this learning easier. A feeder filled at roughly the same time each morning creates a regular pattern. Footsteps follow a familiar route. The person appears, food arrives, and no attack follows. Cardinals can learn parts of that routine without understanding the household in a human way. Their behavior reflects memory, food motivation, and careful risk assessment. Human-style friendship belongs to a different kind of relationship. Even a tolerant cardinal usually preserves an escape route. It may feed near a porch while keeping a hedge only a few wing beats away. The bird often pauses between seeds, raises its head, and scans the surrounding area. A sudden movement from an unfamiliar direction can still send it rapidly into cover. Tolerance remains flexible because the environment can change without warning. The same bird that permits a person to approach within several meters may react fiercely toward another cardinal. During the breeding season, males defend space through song, pursuit, raised crests, and closed displays. A reflection in a window or car mirror can trigger repeated attacks because the image behaves like an intruder that refuses to leave. Females may also strike reflections or chase rivals near nesting areas. These responses show that calm behavior around people can exist alongside strong territorial instincts. Urban life also changes the sounds cardinals use. Traffic, lawn equipment, air conditioners, and human voices create a layer of low-frequency noise. Low-frequency sound has a deeper pitch and can overlap with the lower portions of birdsong. Studies of cardinals in noisier environments have recorded songs containing higher minimum frequencies. Raising the lowest notes may help parts of the song remain audible above the background sound. Other features can shift as well. In more urbanized landscapes, some cardinal songs have been recorded as longer and delivered at a faster rate. Timing patterns have also varied with local cardinal density, meaning the number of nearby birds may influence how often and how quickly songs are repeated. The bird therefore responds to both the physical city and the social population living inside it. Artificial light changes the daily schedule. Street lights, porch lamps, illuminated parking lots, and glowing windows extend brightness beyond sunset. A large acoustic analysis found northern cardinals among the species whose vocal day became longer in brighter nighttime environments. Some birds began singing earlier before sunrise or continued later after natural light had faded. Extra singing time may affect territory defense and communication, though it also alters the normal relationship between light, rest, and daily activity. Glass creates a more immediate danger. A window can reflect sky, trees, and open space so clearly that a flying bird does not recognize the solid surface. Young birds and adults may collide at high speed. Placing visible patterns on the outside of the glass can help break up the reflection. Outdoor cats create another serious risk because cardinals often feed and raise fledglings close to the ground. A feeder positioned beside dense cover provides quick shelter, though vegetation can also give a stalking cat a hidden approach. Food itself requires care. Seed exposed to rain can become damp and support mold. Waste and old hulls collecting beneath a feeder may encourage bacteria or attract rodents. Regular cleaning reduces these risks without changing the bird into a dependent pet. The cardinal still gathers wild fruit, insects, and seeds across a much larger area. Closeness to people therefore contains several different behaviors. Curiosity can bring a bird toward movement. Learned tolerance allows it to remain near a predictable person. Food motivation draws it toward a feeder, while pair bonds explain why two cardinals may arrive together. None of these behaviors removes the bird's independence. A familiar cardinal remains a wild animal, making daily decisions about distance, shelter, food, and danger. That balance may explain why people feel such a strong connection to it. The bird appears close enough to recognize across seasons, yet it keeps enough distance to remain part of the untamed world beyond the window. Over time, that combination gave the cardinal meanings that extended far beyond its feathers, song, and biology. A bird that returns to the same yard through summer heat and winter snow becomes easy to remember. Its shape is simple to recognize. The pointed crest, thick bill, black facial mask, and red body remain visible even from across a field or through a kitchen window. Its common name grew from that vivid color. European settlers compared the male's red feathers with the scarlet clothing worn by senior members of the Roman Catholic clergy, known as cardinals. The comparison became attached to the bird long before its modern scientific classification was settled. In 1758, Carl Linnaeus published the name Loxia cardinalis in the 10th edition of Systema Naturae. The second word preserved the familiar association with red clerical clothing. Later naturalists moved the species into its present genus, producing the repeated scientific name Cardinalis cardinalis. Human attention did not always benefit the bird. Bright plumage and clear song once made northern cardinals desirable as cage birds. Wild individuals were trapped, transported, and sold for private keeping. The practice removed breeding adults from local populations and placed a resident woodland bird inside a confined artificial environment. The wider trade in native feathers and songbirds eventually helped produce stronger wildlife laws in North America. In the United States, the Migratory Bird Treaty Act became law in 1918. The act was created to carry out an agreement between the United States and Canada, which was then represented in international matters by Great Britain. It protects listed native migratory birds from unauthorized killing, capture, possession, sale, purchase, trade, or transport. The legal word take covers actions such as killing or capturing a protected bird. Northern cardinals, along with their eggs, feathers, and active nests, fall under this federal protection. A person may enjoy a cardinal at a feeder, photograph it, or watch a pair build a nest. Keeping a wild cardinal as a pet or collecting its eggs and feathers requires legal authorization that ordinary private possession does not provide. Protection helped preserve the bird in the landscape, while its public image continued to spread. 7 states eventually selected the northern cardinal as their official state bird. Illinois adopted it first in 1929 after schoolchildren participated in choosing a state symbol. Indiana followed in 1933. Ohio selected the cardinal in 1933 as well. Kentucky made it official in 1926, North Carolina in 1943, West Virginia in 1949, and Virginia in 1950. No other single bird represents as many states. The cardinal also appears in school names, sports teams, holiday decorations, paintings, and household objects across North America. Several traits support this unusual cultural reach. The male can be identified quickly by people with little knowledge of birds. Cardinals live near homes and remain through winter instead of disappearing during autumn migration. Their songs are loud enough to enter gardens and city streets. Pairs may visit the same feeder for months, giving people repeated encounters with what can seem like familiar individuals. Personal meanings have grown from those encounters. Some people associate a cardinal with loyalty because pairs often remain together through a breeding season. Others connect the bird with winter, home, endurance, or the return of color during a difficult time of year. A widespread modern belief holds that seeing a cardinal can represent a visit or message from someone who has died. These stories belong to folklore, family tradition, and personal interpretation. Cardinal biology does not provide evidence that the bird carries messages from deceased people. The bird is responding to food, shelter, mates, rivals, weather, and the other conditions of its own life. A symbolic meaning can still hold emotional value for the person who experiences it. Law and science address the physical animal. Folklore addresses the meaning people place upon an encounter. Both have influenced the way the cardinal is treated, remembered, and protected. Its cultural prominence grew because a highly visible wild bird remained close enough for repeated observation across generations. That affection has made the cardinal one of the continent's most recognizable animals. Recognition alone cannot supply caterpillars to nestlings, shrubs for hidden nests, or safe routes past reflective glass. The living bird still depends on the same practical conditions that shaped every stage of its story. Beyond the symbols people place upon it, the northern cardinal remains a living population shaped by millions of daily successes and failures. Across most of its range, the species is still widespread and abundant. Long-term records from the North American Breeding Bird Survey provide one of the clearest ways to track that condition. Since 1966, trained observers have returned each year to thousands of roadside routes across the United States and Canada, recording birds heard or seen at a series of fixed stops. Those repeated counts allow researchers to measure broad population change over decades. Continental assessments describe the northern cardinal's recent trend as generally stable. Canadian monitoring shows a much larger increase, especially since the 1970s, when cardinals began becoming more established beyond their older range in southwestern Ontario. Current Canadian assessments place the species within its population goal range. A stable or growing total still contains countless local losses. One neighborhood may gain cardinals as shrubs mature and feeders become available. Another may lose them when a hedge is removed, an old field is cleared, or repeated window collisions reduces the number of breeding adults. A pair can fail several times during one season, even while the regional population remains healthy. Continental success emerges only when survival and reproduction across all those places remain high enough to balance mortality. The requirements behind that balance are now familiar. Dense vegetation hides open-cup nests and shelters fledglings that cannot yet fly well. Seed-bearing plants and fruiting shrubs feed adults through much of the year. Caterpillars, beetles, and other invertebrates provide growing nestlings with concentrated protein. Evergreen branches and tangled hedges reduce wind exposure during cold winter nights. Connected patches of cover allow birds to move between feeding areas without crossing long stretches of exposed ground. A feeder can support one part of this system. The surrounding habitat determines how safely the food can be used and whether a pair can complete the rest of its life cycle nearby. Human landscapes have given cardinals many opportunities. Suburbs created forest edges, ornamental plantings, and dependable winter food. The same environments contain reflective glass, free-roaming cats, pesticides, and large areas of closely cut lawn. Insecticides can reduce the prey available when nestlings are growing fastest. Simplified landscaping removes the layered vegetation needed for concealment and escape. Windows turn reflected trees and sky into surfaces. Birds may strike at full flight speed. These hazards can be reduced through practical changes, though no yard can remove every danger. The future northern boundary of the cardinal's range will continue responding to climate. Milder minimum temperatures may allow more birds to survive winters beyond the present edge. New populations could become established where suitable shrubs and food are available. Warming also brings pressures that do not point in one direction. Drought can reduce fruit and seed production. Intense storms may destroy active nests or damage the vegetation supporting them. Periods of unusual heat can place incubating females and exposed nestlings under thermal stress. Plant flowering, insect emergence, and bird breeding may shift at different rates. An ecological mismatch occurs when connected seasonal events stop lining up as closely as they once did. Cardinal parents depend on abundant insects during the short period when young birds are building tissue most rapidly. Changes in that timing could influence breeding success, even in places where adults remain common. The cardinal's ability to use many foods and habitats gives it some flexibility. That flexibility still operates within limits set by temperature, cover, available prey, and safe nesting space. The male from the opening winter scene can now be seen again inside a bare shrub. His red plumage carries carotenoids gathered from food and chemically changed before being placed into feathers during molt. The thick bill beneath his black mask can split a seed and later carry an insect to a chick. Warm air remains trapped among his fluffed feathers, while metabolism replaces heat escaping into the cold. Nearby, the female moves through the inner branches. Her brown body blends more closely with bark and shadow, while red remains visible in her crest, wings, and tail. Her voice may cross the thicket as clearly as the male's. In another season, she may inspect a fork only a few feet above the ground and shape loose fibers into a cup. The birds appear close because generations of cardinals learn to survive in hedges, gardens, stream corridors, and regrowing woodland beside people. Their familiarity rests upon a complex wildlife that continues beyond each brief encounter. A flash of red remains visible between the branches for another moment. Then the bird moves deeper into the shrub, leaving only a small patch of color and a clear whistle passing through the winter air.